Okay, we're going to chapter 6 first. Jakhanda Vaga, 6.1. Ayu Sankara Vosa Jana Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Vesali in the great wood in the hall of the gabled house. Then in the forenoon the Lord, having put on his robe and taken his bowl and outer cloak, entered Vesali for alms food. Having walked in Vesali for alms food and returned after the meal, he addressed the Venerable Ananda. Take a mat, Ananda. I will go to the Chapala shrine for the midday period. Very well, revered sir, the Venerable Ananda replied. And taking a mat, he followed close behind the Lord. Then the Lord approached the Chapala shrine and on reaching it sat down on a prepared seat. Sitting there, the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda. Pleasant Ananda is Vesali. Pleasant is the Udana shrine, the Gotamaka shrine, the Satamba shrine, the Bahuputta shrine, the Sarandada shrine, and the Chapala shrine. When anyone, Ananda, has developed and cultivated the 4 bases of psychic power, made them the vehicle, made them the basis, established, consolidated, and properly practiced them, he could, if he so wishes, live out the aeon, or what remains of the aeon. Aeon is the world cycle, the Pali is Kappa. The Tathagata Ananda has developed and cultivated the 4 bases of psychic power and properly practiced them. And if he so wishes, the Tathagata could live out the aeon or what remains of the aeon. But even though such a broad hint was made by the Lord, such an evident indication, the Venerable Ananda was unable to comprehend it, and he did not entreat the Lord, saying, Revered Sir, let the Lord live out the aeon, let the Sugata live out the aeon, for the welfare of the many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the good welfare and happiness of devas and men. As his mind was possessed by Mara. You recall this sutta, this incident, we already read in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. A second time and a third time the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda, saying, Pleasant Ananda is Vesali, etc. And the Tathagata could live out the aeon or what remains of the aeon. But a second and a third time the Venerable Ananda was unable to comprehend it, as his mind was possessed by Mara. Then the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda, Go, Ananda, do now what you think it is time to do. Very well, revered sir, the Venerable Ananda replied. And rising from his seat, he prostrated himself before the Lord. And keeping his right side towards him, he went and sat down at the foot of a certain tree not far away. Then not long after the departure of the Venerable Ananda, Mara the evil one approached the Lord. Standing to one side, Mara the evil one said to the Lord, Let the Lord, revered sir, now attain final Nibbana. Let the Sugata attain final Nibbana. It is now time, revered sir, for the Lord's final Nibbana. These words, revered sir, were spoken by the Lord. I will not attain final Nibbana, evil one, until my monk disciples are wise, disciplined, confident, attain to security from bondage, learned, experts in Dhamma, practicing according to Dhamma, practicing the proper way, living by following Dhamma. Nor until after learning it from their own teachers, they will be able to announce, teach, declare, establish, reveal, expound, and explain it to others. Nor until refuting with Dhamma the arisen theories of others, they will be able to teach Dhamma that is convincing. But now, revered sir, the Lord's monk disciples are wise, etc., able to teach Dhamma that is convincing. Let the Lord, revered sir, now attain final Nibbana. Let the Sugata attain final Nibbana. It is now time, revered sir, for the Lord's final Nibbana. These words, revered sir, were spoken by the Lord. I will not attain final Nibbana, evil one, until my non-disciples are wise, etc., able to teach Dhamma that is convincing. I will not attain final Nibbana until the men lay followers, the women lay followers who are my disciples are wise, etc., able to teach Dhamma that is convincing. But now, revered sir, the Lord's non-disciples, men and women lay followers who are the Lord's disciples are wise, etc., able to teach Dhamma that is convincing. Let the Lord now attain final Nibbana. Let the Sugata attain final Nibbana. It is now time, revered sir, for the Lord's final Nibbana. These words were spoken by the Lord. I will not attain final Nibbana, evil one, until this holy life of mine has become successful and prosperous, widely spread and disseminated among many, until it is well expounded among devas and men. But now, revered Sir, the Lord's holy life is successful and prosperous, widely spread and disseminated among many. It is well expounded among devas and men. It is now time, revered Sir, for the Lord's final Nibbana. When this had been said, the Lord addressed Mara, the evil one. You may rest content, evil one. You will not be long before the Tathagata's final Nibbana. 3 months from now, the Tathagata will attain final Nibbana. It was then at the Chapala shrine that the Lord, mindful and clearly comprehending, relinquished the life volition. And when the Lord had relinquished the life volition, a great earthquake occurred, and a fearful hair-raising peal of thunder rent the air. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on this occasion this inspired utterance. The sage relinquished the existence volition, which originates the immeasurable and immeasurable. Inwardly happy and composed, he sundered self-existence like a coat of mail. That's the end of the sutta here. So, the Buddha hinted that if he wanted to, he could live for a world cycle. But the later books like the commentary, they find it impossible. How can a human being live for a world cycle? So they change it to, instead of world cycle, they said it's just a life cycle. Meaning that during the Buddha's time, lifespans were generally about 100 years. So the Buddha was 80 years old when he passed on. If the Buddha wanted to, could live for another 20 years. So instead of kappa, they changed it to ayu kappa. But in actual fact, the Pali is kappa, world cycle. So here, when the Buddha decided to enter Nibbana, he relinquished the life volition. Ayu Sankara. Sankara means volition. So life volition is basically the will to live. Only when you let go of the will to live, then you will pass on. So the sage relinquished the existence volition, the will to live, which originates the measurable and immeasurable. Measurable is supposed to be the sense sphere and the form sphere, and the immeasurable, the formless. Okay, 6.2, Jatila Sutta. Jatila, matted hair ascetics. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the eastern park in Megara's mother's mansion. On that occasion the Lord had emerged from seclusion in the evening and was sitting outside the gate. Then King Parsanadi of Kosala approached the Lord, prostrated himself and sat down to one side. At that moment, not far from the Lord, there passed by 7 Jatila ascetics, 7 Nigantas or Jains, 7 naked ascetics, 7 single garment ascetics, and 7 wanderers, all with hairy bodies and long nails, and carrying their requisites in a bundle on a shoulder pole. King Parsanadi of Kosala saw these groups of 7 passing by not far from the Lord. On seeing them, he arose from his seat, arranged his robe over one shoulder, knelt down with his right knee on the ground, and raising his folded hands towards those groups of 7, he announced his name 3 times thus, Revered Sirs, I am King Parsanadi of Kosala. Then soon after the departure of those groups of 7, King Parsanadi of Kosala approached the Lord again, prostrated himself, sat down to one side, and said to the Lord, Revered Sir, could any one of these be among those in the world who are Arahants, or who have entered the path to Arahantship? Stop here for a moment. When this sutta was spoken, this King Parsanadi had just come to have faith in the Buddha and did not know enough Dhamma to tell who is an Arahant, who is not an Arahant. So out of ignorance, he paid respect to all those external ascetics. Just like a lot of Chinese who don't really know the Dhamma. when you pass any Taoist temple, any type of statue, out of fear you also pay respect. That's not a lot of Chinese said that. And then the Buddha said, "Great king, being a layman, enjoying the pleasures of the senses, living at home with the encumbrance of children, making use of sandalwood from Kasi, wearing garlands, scents and unguents, and handling gold and silver," meaning money. It is difficult for you to know whether or not these are arahants, or whether they have entered the path to arahantship. It is by living with a person that his virtue is to be known, great king, and then only after a long time, not after a short period, and only by considering it, not without consideration, and only by one who is wise, not by a fool. Similarly, it is by associating with a person that his purity is to be known. It is in adversity that a person's fortitude is to be known. It is by discussion with a person that his wisdom is to be known, great king, and then only after a long time, not after a short period, and only by considering it, not without consideration, and only by one who is wise, not by a fool. Stop here for a moment. So here basically the Buddha says, to know a person really well, to know a person's heart, it takes a long time. A lot of people, they know somebody for a short time and they make conclusions that is not accurate. And not only that, the person who is making judgments, he has to be very sharp-witted, very able to notice, and a very intelligent person. The Buddha said, a fool cannot judge a wise man, but a wise man can judge a fool. And then the king said, "It is wonderful, revered sir. It is marvelous, revered sir. How well this has been said by the Lord. These, revered sir, are my men in disguise, for informers who are returning after spying on the country. First, information is gathered by them, and afterwards I will make them disclose it. Now, revered sir, when they have washed off the dust and mud, are well bathed and perfumed, and have trimmed their hair and beards and dressed themselves in white garments, they will go about given to and provided with the 5 kinds of sensual pleasure." Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "One should not strive everywhere. One should not be another's man. One should not live depending on another. One should not make a business of Dhamma." Stop here for a moment. So the king, he agreed with the Buddha that it's hard to judge a person. Then he referred to his spies. The king has a lot of spies, informers. They disguise themselves and go and gather information for the king. And after they come back and tell all the secrets to the king, and the king provides them with the 5 kinds of sensual pleasure to enjoy. 6.3 Pachavekana Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Lord was sitting, reviewing the various unwholesome states that had been abandoned by him, and the various wholesome states brought to completion through development. Then on realizing that the various unwholesome states had been abandoned by him, and the various wholesome states had been brought to completion through development, bhavana, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "What formerly was, later was not. What formerly was not, later was. It was not and will not be, and does not now exist." This is a famous phrase, but different people translate it differently. What formerly was not, that means what's in the former lives was not. Later was. What formerly was, later was not. What formerly was probably is the self. Formerly the Buddha had a self, later he had no more self. And what formerly was not, later was. Probably he didn't have the wisdom before, or enlightenment before, and then later he had. It was not and will not be. There was no self before, and there will be no self and in the future, and even now does not exist. But there are many different ways of interpretation. Different people will interpret differently. 6.4 Patama Jnana Titiya Sutta. Or is it Nana Titiya Sutta? I think Nana Titiya Patama, the first Nana Titiya Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood in Anathapindika's monastery. At that time there were a number of recluses and Brahmins, wanderers of various sects, living around Savatthi. And they were of various views, of various beliefs, of various opinions, and they relied on their support on their various views. There were some recluses and Brahmins who asserted and held this view. The world is eternal, only this is true, any other view is false. There were some recluses and Brahmins who asserted, the world is not eternal, only this is true, any other view is false. And then, the world is finite, the world is infinite, the life principle and the body are the same, the life principle and the body are different. The Tathagata exists beyond death. The Tathagata does not exist beyond death. The Tathagata both exists and does not exist beyond death. The Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist beyond death. Only this is true, any other view is false. And they lived quarrelsome, disputatious and wrangling, wounding each other with verbal darts, saying, Dhamma is like this, Dhamma is not like that, Dhamma is not like this, Dhamma is like that. Then a number of monks, having put on their robes in the forenoon, and taken their bows and outer cloaks, entered Savatthi for alms food. Having walked in Savatthi for alms food and returned after the meal, they approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said to the Lord, At present, revered Sir, there are a number of recluses and Brahmins, wanderers of various sects, living around Savatthi, and they are of various views, etc., saying this and saying that. And the Buddha said, The wanderers of other sects, monks, are blind, unseeing. They do not know what is beneficial. They do not know what is harmful. They do not know what is Dhamma. They do not know what is not Dhamma. Not knowing what is beneficial and what is harmful. Not knowing what is Dhamma and what is not Dhamma. They are quarrelsome, disputing, etc., saying Dhamma is like this, Dhamma is like that. Formerly, monks, there was a certain king in this very Savatthi, and that king addressed a man, Come now, my good man, bring together all those persons in Savatthi who have been blind from birth. Yes, your majesty, that man replied. And after detaining all the blind people in Savatthi, he approached the king and said, All the blind people in Savatthi have been brought together, your majesty. And the king said, Now, my man, show the blind people an elephant. Very well, your majesty, the man replied to the king. And he presented an elephant to the blind people, saying, This blind people is an elephant. To some of the blind people he presented the head of the elephant, saying, This is an elephant. To some he presented an ear of the elephant, saying, This is an elephant. To some he presented a tusk, the trunk, the body, the foot, the hindquarters, the tail, the tuft at the end of the tail, saying, This is an elephant. Then monks, the man, having shown the elephant to the blind people, went to the king and said, The blind people have been shown the elephant, your majesty. Do now what you think is suitable. Then the king approached those blind people and said, Have you been shown the elephant? And they said, Yes, your majesty, we have been shown the elephant. And the king said, Tell me, blind people, what is an elephant like? Those blind people who had been shown the head of the elephant replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a water jar. Those blind people who had been shown the ear of the elephant replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a winnowing basket. Those blind people who had been shown the tusks of the elephant replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a plowshare. Those blind people who had been shown the trunk replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a plow pole. Those blind people who had been shown the body replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a storeroom. Those blind people who had been shown the foot replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a post. Those blind people who had been shown the hindquarters replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a mortar. Those blind people who had been shown the tail replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a pestle. Those blind people who had been shown the tuft at the end of the tail replied, An elephant, your majesty, is just like a broom. Saying an elephant is like this, an elephant is not like that, an elephant is not like this, an elephant is like that, they fought each other with their fists, and the king was delighted with the spectacle. Even so, monks are those wanderers of various sects, blind, unseeing, saying Dhamma is like this, Dhamma is like that. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Some recluses and Brahmins, so-called, are deeply attached to their own views. People who see only one side of things, engage in quarrels and disputes. This reminds me, just like some people, they study one sutta, and then they think they know everything about that topic. So just like these blind people, to really understand, you have to see it from different angles. The more angles you see it, the more you understand. Similarly, for example, if you want to understand Satipatthana, you cannot understand just from the Satipatthana Sutta. You got to study all the suttas dealing with Satipatthana, and most of it are in the Samyutta Nikaya. So the more suttas you read, then you understand the topic from more angles. Just like this blind man. Don't be narrow-minded. You just study one sutta and think you know everything. The more suttas, the more important it is. That's why I always encourage people to study the suttas. But some people, they study Pali. And then when they study Pali, and then they go and dissect one sutta into all the details, and they think they understand the sutta. But to me, it's better if you study a lot of suttas instead of concentrating on one or two suttas and use your knowledge of Pali to split hairs. I find some monks, they do that. 6.5 Duttya Nanatitya Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. At that time there were a number of recluses and Brahmins, wanderers of various sects, living around Savatthi. And they were of various views, of various beliefs, of various opinions, and they relied for support on their various views. There were some recluses and Brahmins who asserted and held this view. The self and the world are eternal, only this is true. Any other view is false. There were some who asserted, the self and the world are not eternal. The self and the world are both eternal, not eternal. The self and the world are neither eternal nor not eternal, etc., etc. And they lived quarrelsome, disputatious and wrangling, wounding each other with verbal darts, saying, Dhamma is like this, Dhamma is not like that, Dhamma is not like this, Dhamma is like that. Then a number of monks, having put on their robes in the forenoon and taken their bowls and outer cloaks, entered Savatthi for alms food. Having walked in Savatthi for alms food and returned after the meal, they approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said to the Lord, At present, revered Sir, there are a number of recluses and Brahmins, wanderers of various sects, living around Savatthi, and they are of various views, saying Dhamma is like this, Dhamma is like that. And the Buddha said, the wanderers of other sects, monks, are blind, unseeing. They do not know what is beneficial. They do not know what is harmful. They do not know what is Dhamma. They do not know what is not Dhamma. Not knowing what is beneficial and what is harmful. Not knowing what is Dhamma and what is not Dhamma. They are quarrelsome, saying Dhamma is like this, Dhamma is like that. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Some recluses and Brahmins, so-called, are deeply attached to their own views. Not finding a firm foothold, they sing in the middle of the stream. 6.6 Tatya Nanatitya Sutta. Thus have I heard, same as before, the recluses and Brahmins of various sects lived quarrelsome, disputatious and wrangling, wounding each other with verbal darts, saying Dhamma is like this, Dhamma is not like that, etc. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. This humankind is attached to self-production, or holds to production by another. Those who have not understood this have not seen it as a dart, but one who sees this as it is, having drawn out the dart, does not think I am the agent, nor does he think another is the agent. This humankind is possessed by conceit, fettered by conceit, bound by conceit, speaking vindictively because of their views. They do not go beyond samsara, the round of rebirths. So this first line, this humankind is attached to self-production or holds to production by another. Probably means that self-production means the world arose by itself. Some people say the world arose by chance. And then production by another, some people say the world arose because it was created by a creator, etc. 6.7 Subhuti Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Subhuti was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect, having attained a non-discursive concentration. The Lord saw the Venerable Subhuti sitting cross-legged not far away, holding his body erect, having attained a non-discursive concentration. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: in whom discursive thoughts have been burnt up, entirely cut off within himself, having overcome that tie, perceiving the formless, surmounting the four bonds, he never comes back. 6.8 Gannika Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo wood at the squirrel's feeding place. At that time there were two factions enamored of and infatuated with a certain courtesan. Start with a moment. This courtesan is like a high-class geisha, high-class prostitute. So there were two groups of people fighting over this beautiful high-class prostitute. They were quarrelsome, disputatious and wrangling, and attacked each other with their fists, with clods of earth, with staves and with weapons, so that they went to their death or suffered near to death. Then a number of monks, having put on their robes in the forenoon and taken their bows and outer cloaks, entered Rajagaha for alms food. Having walked in Rajagaha for alms food and returned after the meal, they approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said to the Lord, "At present, revered Sir, there are two factions enamored of and infatuated with a certain courtesan, etc." Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: what has been attained and what is still to be attained, both these are littered with dust for a frail person who trains after one with wrong view. Those who hold training as the essence, or who hold virtue and vow or precepts, pure livelihood, celibacy and service as the essence, this is one extreme. And those with such theories and views, such as there is no fault in sensual desires, this is the second extreme. Both these extremes cause the cemeteries to grow, and the cemeteries cause wrong views to grow. By not penetrating these two extremes, some hold back and some go too far. But for those who penetrated them and were no more found among them, and who do not conceive on this account, there is no ground for the manifestation of them. So here basically the Buddha is saying there are two extremes. One is asceticism, those who practice self-austerity, self-torment, and the other is those who delight in sensual pleasures, and these two are wrong views, cause the cemeteries to grow. 6.9 Upatti Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, on a very dark night, the Lord was sitting in the open air and oil lamps were burning. Now at that time, many flying insects were coming to misfortune and destruction by falling into those oil lamps. The Lord saw those flying insects coming to misfortune and destruction by flying to those oil lamps. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: rushing headlong and missing the essence, they bring about renewed bondage, like insects falling into the flame. Some are intent only on what is seen and heard. So people who take delight in what is seen and heard, worldly things, they rush headlong to enjoy. Then they fall into the flame Flame of samsara, round of rebirths. 6.10. Tathagata Upada Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Lord, prostrated himself, sat down to one side and said, Revered Sir, as long as Tathagatas do not appear in the world, Arahants, Sammasambuddhas, so long are wanderers of other sects respected, revered, honored, venerated and given homage. And they obtain the requisites of robes, arms, food, lodgings and medicines. But when Tathagatas appear in the world, Arahants, Sammasambuddhas, then the wanderers of other sects are not respected, revered, honored, venerated and given homage, and they do not obtain the requisites of robes, arms, food, lodgings and medicines. Now, revered Sir, only the Lord is respected, revered, honored, venerated and given homage, and also the Sangha of monks. And the Buddha said, So it is, Ananda, as long as the Tathagatas do not appear in the world, so long are wanderers of other sects respected. Now only the Tathagata is respected, and also the Sangha of monks. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. The glowworm shines as long as the sun has not risen. But when that illuminant arises, the glowworm's light is quenched and shines no more. Even so, the wanderers shine only as long as fully awakened ones do not appear in the world. These thinkers are not purified, nor yet their disciples, for those of perverse views are not released from suffering. Let's stop here. Anything to discuss?
Okay. I want to say about Chitta, I mentioned it now. True Chitta was the person who actually ordained 7 times as a monk, and upon the 7th time that he ordained, he became a monk. And this is why the rules for monks is that you cannot ordain 7 times in a lifetime.
Where did you read that?
I read it from some Udana Chapter.
No, such thing. This thing about being ordained 7 times is found in the Mahayana. In the Theravada, there is no limit to the number of times you can ordain, as long as the preceptor is willing to ordain that person. There are these things about 7 times. It was from the external sect ascetics, even during the Buddha's time, so it crept into Mahayana Buddhism. For example, not only this ordaining 7 times, also during the Buddha's time, these external sect ascetics, when they go and beg for their food, they only go to 7 houses. And if they cannot get after 7 houses, they stop begging for their food. And this is also mentioned in the Mahayana books. So a lot of things in the Mahayana are later, because we know very well Mahayana started 500 years after the Buddha's passing away. So what was prevalent during that period, 500 years after the Buddha's passing away, a lot of things they absorbed from the external sect ascetics, and then they crept into Mahayana Buddhism and they call it Buddhism. This is a Thai tradition. Thai tradition, when you drink or you eat, is impolite to stand. You either have to sit or you have to squat. But it's not in the Vinaya, just like it's not in the Vinaya that when a woman gives something to a monk, he must put a piece of cloth to receive it. You can receive it directly. But in the Thai tradition, you have to put a piece of cloth to receive it. So when I'm in Thailand, I have to follow, I do as the Romans do. When I'm in Malaysia, I do as Malaysians do. Because there are those monks who are very attached to the Thai tradition, they are unhappy with me.
Okay. About Sutta 5.5, the Upasana day. Why the Buddha cannot recite the Patimokkha, but in a gathering that is impure?
Because the monk's head was split into 7 pieces.
Is that the monk is impure? Does it mean that the monk have offense the four the serious offenses?
It is not mentioned that basically the monk does not keep the precepts and he has no interest to keep the precepts, and he wears the robe just to be respected and have a place to sleep, have free food and all this. Not just like some people wear the robe for that purpose. Otherwise, if they live the life of a layman, they have to work very hard. A lot of people who wear the robe, they forget that when you wear the robe and you receive all these offerings, it's like you are using a credit card. You have to pay for it sometime or other. So if you don't practice well and you take all these offerings and all these vows and all that, next time you have to pay. That's why it is mentioned that the Arahants or maybe also the Aryans, not only they deserve the offerings and that they receive.
About Sutta 6.7, the last sentence of the verse, surmounting the 4 points. What is the 4 points? What are the 4 points?
I can't tell you offhand. I have to check up. Yeah, it should be in the notes behind. I think we went through the 4 bonds, the 4 floods, the 4 all these things. Yeah, the thing. Now you can end here.